Welcome to Ask The Latina. I'm your host, Terry Beltran. This program is about the opportunity to ask and learn from a Latina trailblazer, with the mission to inspire and motivate Latinas to enter a career where we just do not have enough representation. For more resources, visit our website, askthelatina.com. Welcome to Ask The Latina. My guest today is Hady Mendez. She's a leader in tech. She's actually part of Latinas in Tech, and I'm so excited to have her with us. Hello, Hady. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Terry. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Well, Hady, why don't you start with telling us your heritage and where you're from?
Absolutely. So I am a very, very proud New Yorican. I identify as Boricua. My parents were born on the island, and my mother's from Aguadilla, my dad's from Moca, and I'm a Boricua.
That's fantastic. I love it. So, have you been to Puerto Rico as well, or as a
Um,
Boricua?
yeah, believe it or not, Terry, I had an opportunity once for work. I used to go all the time. I had clients in Puerto Rico, and I would get to go like every couple of weeks or months. I was on the island. That happened for a period of a couple of years in a previous role that I had. But the last time I was there was actually right before COVID. So I was there in March of 2020, literally like got here through this, got back to New York through the skin of my teeth so I could quarantine here because otherwise I would have been in Puerto Rico for the quarantine period. And I would say that share that I am going to be on a plane to Puerto Rico, si Dios quiere, this Monday. So I'm going
Oh,
back. I'm going back finally. 3 years later, I'm going to be back in Puerto Rico.
that's exciting. I love that. So, tell us about your high school. What was that experience like? And then, at what point did you decide to do something in your career, like get into? Well, let's start with high school. What was the experience like there? And did you have mentors
Uh
and
huh.
things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a fun question. It'll be a nice trip down memory lane. I went to Mary Bertram High School in Manhattan, in New York, here in New York City. And Mary Bertram High School at the time, this was in the late 80s, was a great school. And my sister had gone there. So she had a great experience. We had a cousin that went there who also had a good experience. So we kind of kept it in the family. And I went there. And it was the name of the school is Mary Bertram High School for Business Careers. So I picked the major. My major was computer science. So even then, that was actually my very first official step into the tech space, and I decided that I was going to study computer science. And believe it or not, my mom, who never graduated from high school, who did not go to college, was the one that encouraged me to pick that major. This was in 1988 is when I graduated, so it would have been 1984, I guess. I was 14 years old, and she said, "Yep, you should go study technology. I think there's going to be some money in that." And so I went and I studied computer science. I worked with punch cards. Anybody who knows anything about technology, I mean, you don't even have to know very much to know that that was like eons ago. It's like Fred
Yeah.
Flintstone times. So I worked on punch cards. I remember our like the mainframe was like took up a whole room. It was like this, like it was like literally it took up a whole room, the mainframe. I remember we had one computer in our computer class for the whole class. It was one computer. The teacher would like type a thing and we would all be like, wow. And that was, I remember it was a TRS 80, which is like about, anybody can Google these things. They're like 1,000 years old. So that was how I started down the field of technology. Obviously my mother was like, she was, I guess, a psychic of sorts and knew that this was going to be where the money was at and where the opportunities would be in the future. And yeah, and then the high school was great. We had great teachers. It was because it was in Manhattan, we had students coming from all over New York City. It was a very multicultural student population. We were actually right on the border of Chinatown. So we had a decent Asian population, a lot of black and brown students, people coming from all boroughs. At the time, I lived in Queens, New York. So I commuted from Queens, but there were people there from the Bronx and Brooklyn and Staten Island. Everybody came to this school. It was really good. We had like really good teachers that were very invested in our education. And I would say it was a very positive experience. The most notable thing that came out of my time there is that I was selected, or I applied to a program called Inroads. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Inroads is a program for like underrepresented people, so black and brown students. And if I remember correctly, the mission of Inroads is to develop and place talented minority youth in business and industry and prepare them for corporate and community leadership. We had to memorize that, and I still remember that's the mission of Inroads. And I joined that program when I was a senior, and I it got me a job. I was like had this like internship when I graduated from high school at Prudential, and I was like doing technology work right out of school.
That's fantastic. It really makes a difference as far as where education and these opportunities that you find. Because similar, I went to a vocational school, and after that, I was working at the hospital in communications, and I really enjoyed that internship. Where right after high school, it's an opportunity for you not only get an internship but also save money for college. So, how was your internship experience at Prudential, and what was your next step as for after that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say it was okay. I think internships, especially back then, it was like the late '80s. They were we didn't there weren't a lot of us, so it wasn't like fully. It's hard. Like sometimes you're like the few and the only in certain spaces. So that was my case where I was like, the only intern slash Latina in this like space, and people didn't really know exactly what to do with me or what work to give me. But I remember I had this. There was an MBA student who was also an intern, but like much more senior to me. Like I had just graduated from high school. This person was getting their MBA, and he was my supervisor. And like he didn't know what to do with me either. But I remember him really caring and just being like, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Like, what cool things can we do? How can we make the best of the summer? Your time here. I remember we had like Inroads had a banquet over the summer, and they invited all of the interns and like our supervisors to come. And I remember him coming, and like I was so like orgullosa of my mentor. He was a white man. Um, Probably you guessed that, but like he was a white man, and I was just like I felt like so proud to like he was there with me to like support me in that as I was like evolving as a young professional. And I remember him talking to me about it and be like, you're part of like an amazing program, like Inroads is pretty dope. I mean, I don't know how many years later. I was like, I guess I was 18, and I'm in my 50s now, so that was over 30 years ago. And Inroads is still going strong, and they're obviously making like have made and continue to make huge impact for Black and Brown students everywhere. But I feel like uh, you know they were a premier organization even back then, and I remember him being like, "Wow, like that's pretty cool what you do." And I'm like, "Yeah." And one really cool part about Inroads, if you don't know the program or if your listeners don't know the program, is not only do we get the internship, but all summer we're getting training, and we usually train on the weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, all these interns are getting together to train you know, I remember it was like business etiquette, how to read the Wall Street Journal, just like really basic, elementary, fundamental things that you should know as you're entering the corporate space. So, because they recognized that a lot of us didn't have role models. Like my mother couldn't tell me how to be in corporate America. She never had been there. So I was fortunate that I have older sisters, and after a while, like they were able to give me some pointers. But Inroads was a phenomenal program in that way, and the students that were part of it, we also were very invested in our futures too. It was designed for people who really wanted to succeed. And so anyway, I just remember like
That's
um,
great.
yeah, it was a very positive experience.
Yeah, I love that, and especially the fact that they prepared you with all those programs. It's an awesome, awesome thing to do. Because yeah, I think that's part of the preparation that's so important, especially in transition from high school. So then, what was your next step after that?
Well, I started college in the fall after I graduated. I went to a local school, but it was local that I could come home and bring my dirty laundry, but it was far enough that I could stay on campus during the school week. So that's what I did. And I was like the first one in my family to actually stay on campus. So it was like, Hady was like breaking ground. And it was pretty cool. I remember like my dad would drop me off, but like my parents didn't even really know what like college was. You know what I mean? Like it was like all new to them as well. But it was the school was not didn't have a lot of people of color, but I did find an amazing, uh, lots of cool organizations to align myself with. So very early on, I joined the Minority Student Union, and I found like a good group of people there that that were my community and my family at school. And I also joined the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, SHEP.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
have heard of
She's
them. And
great.
SHEP, I was in the student chapter of SHEP right out of the gate. And I still do stuff with SHEP. Like I'm still part of SHEP New York City right now as a professional. I've led workshops there. I've done a lot of planning around, Latinx and tech series and things like that. But yeah, those things, man, they are, they provide you a community and a home base that you never,
Yeah.
especially 30 years ago, how crucial you can imagine that was. Like there's so many more of us now, and we're like, Latinos are taking over the world, but back then I feel like we were very few and far between, especially in the tech space. So it was so nice to have these communities that could hold us and hold space for us. And yeah, and I ended up being very invested in SHEP and the Minority Student Union when I was in school.
Yeah, that's so important. I know that, when I went to Michigan State University and I was part of SHIP as well because I went into industrial engineering and industrial design primarily is what I liked. And I remember SHIP, was great. It was also SWE, Society of Women Engineers.
Yep, I remember them
Uh,
too.
so I was involved with them, and we would do a lot of road trips and to other universities like in Indiana and stuff like that.
Igualita.
But yeah, I'm still involved with SHIP, and mostly I think it was at the very beginning that I got involved was when I worked at GM, and I had friends that worked at Ford, and they were like 5 sisters and brothers that were all in engineering they were all, of Mexican descent, and they were really great. They ended up starting SHIP here in Michigan. I remember going to the first one and going, "Wow, yeah, that was pretty cool." So I think actually I didn't know SHIP until afterwards, after I was working. I didn't know about it when I was at Michigan State. I knew about SWE, now that I remember. But it's
Okay,
an actually great program for college students, especially if they get
absolutely.
their chapters going. They do a lot with the students here, and I think I'm back involved as a member, and I do whatever I can to help them. And now my sons are involved with them as students from college, so they're awesome. They are
Yeah,
really
I ended
cool.
up sorry to cut you off, Terry. I was going to say, because I thought of it right now, that I ended up leaving Inroads after 2 years. And
Mm.
through my involvement in SHEP, at one of the SHEP conferences, another company recruited me. And so I went to work for a company called Bell Communications Research, which doesn't even exist anymore. Bellcore was the name of it. And they had an internship program for students from historically Black colleges and universities, so the HBCUs. And they also had, students from the University of Puerto Rico, and then like me. And I ended up joining that program. It was like several hundred students. We lived on the Rutgers campus, and we worked at Belcor for the summer. And it was that was a good program. Like that ended up being a pretty amazing.
Oh.
Inroads was great, but this was a good. This kind of was also good. So it's like I didn't go. I don't think I took a step down. I think I definitely. It was a good next move for me, and I ended up even getting a job offer from them when I graduated from school that I did not take, but I got a job offer from them. So it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It prepared me to have an opportunity right at graduation.
Mhm. It also prepared you with the interview process too, because that conference is amazing. All the companies that are there, I mean, they've grown a lot. So, and it's an important event for any college student who's part of the SHIP chapter. Sometimes those are paid for the students to go to. So, fantastic. So then, so you were in computer science 4 years you were in college, and which college did you go to?
I went to Manhattan College, and I actually did not major in computer science when I went to college. I majored in computer science in high school. In college, I majored in computer information systems. A little bit different because that put me in the School of Business. So I was in the School of Business. I took all of the core business classes like marketing and finance and economics and, whatever, statistics, all that jazz. But then the information system courses were all about like how to apply technology to all of these business, areas. So it's like, how do you automate and design systems for marketing? How do you automate and design systems for finance? How do you automate and design systems for fill in the blank? And so that was actually what I majored in. And then it was a Catholic, it is still a Catholic university, Manhattan College. And the Christian Brothers run it. And I actually minored in religious studies. So, which plays a role later in my life, and it's related to something that I was talking to you about before we got on. But I ended up being a missioner, and I feel like I always had a heart for service and, um, faith. And so, yeah, that combination of being a information systems major, religious studies minor. Apparently, only one other person in the whole history of Manhattan College had done that combination, and that person went on to be a priest. Since I
Oh,
couldn't be a priest, I did the next best thing, and I became a missioner.
that's great. So you did that during college or combination when you were doing college
No, I
and the
wasn't a missioner
missionary?
when I was in college. I just
After.
minored in religious studies when I was in
Oh,
college.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I had
So,
a career in technology and finance for about 20 years before I ended up going on mission. So that
oh,
came
okay.
later.
So, tell us about your opportunity after you started, after you finished college, as far as like, what was it like as far as the landscape now? Because you decided to go into that field to be able to find opportunities.
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 1992, a thousand years ago as well. And it was awesome. Actually ended up working for what is now called Accenture. At the time, it was called Anderson Consulting. So I worked for a consulting company for 3 years. And that, I'm not going to lie, was probably the best move for me. It was an amazing, amazing learning experience. I was surrounded by very, very intelligent, competent, like the best of the best in that space. And I learned a lot. I was in a customer facing role, like that's what you are when you're a consultant. You're assigned to customer projects, and often they're on site with customers. And that kind of set me up for a lifetime of being a customer facing person. I like working with customers. That's like my favorite thing. And I learned how to work with customers and how to think about a customer and how to like always be like have that mindset, that customer advocacy mindset, and that customer focus mindset from the early days from being a consultant.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great company. Now, how you after Accenture, where did you go next?
I went to a smaller, they were like kind of a financial services company, and I was a developer, like a programmer, application developer when I first graduated from school. So
Awesome.
I did some programming when I was at Anderson, and then I did some more programming at this job. It was a small benefits consulting company that ended up getting bought out by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And
Wow.
so I was a developer, a programmer, and I actually was an okay programmer. I'm not going to say I was like horrible. I wasn't like amazing. I was kind of like average, I would consider. But the problem with programming for me is that I am an extrovert and I like dealing with people. And when you're a programmer, you're like sitting in your cube all day by yourself, like trying to solve. And so every once in a while, you invite somebody in. You're like, "What am I doing wrong?" Because like like as you're working on your code, it doesn't work, and you're like, "What? I've like stepped through it every which way I know how, and I can't figure out why it's not working." So like the only times I would talk to people was like to try and problem solve, and then it was like, "Okay, see you in 20 hours. Now I got to go back and doing this." And that just I remember talking to my manager and being like, "Hey, can I like deal with people, like this is just not that much fun for me." So it started off that I was like getting he got me more involved in like the conversations about like what are the use cases, so what were the business problems that I was trying to solve, because up to that point he would meet the customers and he just like would tell me like, well, I work with, I was talking to people at the call center and they need an application that does this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay. And then I would go and build it. But then he was like, okay, now you can come to the meetings and like hear firsthand, because then you get more context and you can really build better solutions, is what I
Mhm.
thought. So I did that for a little while, but then I was like, I want to be a project manager was what I wanted to be. So I did programming for like 7 years. And then
Mhm.
eventually I went into project management. That was the next thing that I did.
That's a great step, though. I mean, it's great because you know the back end enough to be able to go in the front end and know what you need to ask your customers. So I think that's a
Thousand
great
percent.
experience. Great.
1,000%. I agree with you. That,
Yeah.
and like when I would get estimates as a project manager, and I'm like, "How long is it going to take you to do this?" They'd be like, "5 months," and I'm like, "5 months? What are you doing that it's going to take?" Because I could push back because I'm like, "Wait a second, I was a developer the other day. This is not going to take 5 months. This is going to take 2 months. I will give you 3 months generously, but why are you going to take 5 months to do it?" And then obviously we talk about it, but like it gave me a lot of agency to be able to push back on estimates that people gave me, or even like when the testers were like, it's going to take us 6 weeks to do this, and I'm like, I don't know, I think you could do it in 3 weeks, so anyway, I felt like it made me a better project manager. But I did that for a little while. That I will tell you is very thankless work, and it is hard work, and I don't, I did not like it very much. So after I thought I was like, I'm gonna love it, I'm like, yeah, I don't like this. I want to do something else. So I ended up being a product manager next,
Okay.
and
That's
that was
great.
really fun. Yeah.
So what was a project manager, so there are young Latinas that are watching, is what was a typical day for a project manager?
So for project manager, okay, we'll go back to that. Project manager, you are basically overseeing the entire project. So that means you're managing the timeline, which is obviously the most critical part of a project is like, are we getting this thing done? Are we falling behind? Are we ahead of schedule? You know, you said it was going to take this long to do it. Is it happening? Are you 50% complete by now? Because you should be, because you know, you should be halfway through. So all of that, we manage costs. So project managers are responsible. We get a budget and it's like, it's going to cost $2 million to do this. And it's like, if you're like going through the money quicker than, you know, ahead of plan, then you might end up needing more money. And sometimes you do. Sometimes there is an occasion. I have definitely gone back to tasks, you know, to committees and been like, I need more money because it's a bigger scope, or you know, we underestimated, or you know, we're going to end up incorporating this other piece, or you know, whatever the reason, but you better have a good rationale for spending more money, because otherwise that's what they're entrusting you. The company and your leaders are entrusting you to deliver something on time and on budget, and if you're going to mess around with either of those variables, you better have a good reason. And then the other thing that you're really doing during that time is managing risk and managing issues. So it's like, you know, I used to be on calls like all day, every day. And it was like, I'm on call with the developers. I'm on call with the test people. I'm on call with compliance. I'm on call with legal. I'm on call with the web dev, with the, you
Yeah,
know, security. And I was on calls with everybody. And then, you know, sometimes it was like, you know, we are finding 60% bugs with the new version of the software. 60%, you know, like that's a lot of bugs. So it's like, you know, then the test team could say like, hey, we don't think the quality of the code is very good. And, you know, this is not really like, quality assurance is supposed to be like, we're supposed to find a bug every other, you know, here and there, not like, we're not supposed to be your test bed where we test everything. So like, if it's like a lot of bugs, that's like a red flag that maybe something was not done well on the development side. And so you got to manage all that risk, and you got to like find quick solutions, and you have to escalate and say, hey, stakeholders, this thing is like code red. Like, this is not looking good. I don't even think we're gonna like, either we're gonna go over on budget, or we're gonna go over on time, or both. And I want to make you aware of it. And then oftentimes they're like, okay, what can we do? And I'm like, I need 10 more developers. I need a whole bunch more system testers. I need XYZ. And you know, we try to mitigate the risk that way.
that's good. So from there, where did you go next?
So then I went to an affiliate of BNY Mellon. They're called Pershing. And I was a product manager at Pershing. And that was like a really fun job. I actually had some other jobs at the other place, but we'll just kind of skip to this job in the interest of time.
Yeah, no, no, sounds good. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you've been so go ahead. What was that experience? What was the one that you really enjoyed the most and why?
oh, I think I enjoyed the next role. So I like the product management position a lot, because basically you're responsible for enhancing and evolving a product. So a product could be like a new account system. That's the product. And it was the product that I was responsible for. And so as a product manager, I did demos for new customers. I went to conferences and talked about the product. I met with customers to understand what enhancements they wanted, what was the priority of those enhancements. I would work with the usability people to make sure that the product, like as we were adding enhancements, that we didn't lose any of the capabilities, and it was still like very intuitive and easy to use. So it's like you wear a lot of hats, and it's like really fun. And I traveled a lot in that role. But I actually, the role that I like best was the next one, which was when I was doing sales. I ended up being part of a this company that kind of, it was like an affiliate that kind of evolved, spun off from the main company. And I ended up being in a sales position there, and I loved it. That's when I really was dealing all the time with customers. I was traveling to customer sites. I ended up being responsible over time for all non-US customers. So I was traveling to Latin America. I was working with customers in the Middle East, in Asia, Canada, everybody. I was doing all non-US.
Wow. And what was the product that you were selling in this one?
It was actually a couple of products. So the company that spun off, we were selling compliance software, we were selling document management software, we were selling like customized internet solutions. We sold what we called like operational reviews, where we would come in and look at your how you ran your back office operations and give you recommendations for how to improve it. So it was products and services, and I was like very intimately involved with all of that. So I got to know customers really well. I ended up just traveling a ton for it. It was really fun.
That is great. That's great. So, what was your next step? Well, you mentioned the missionary. At what point did you go in that? I'm
Okay, so
curious about
we'll skip to that part now.
that.
So yeah, after a while and all that, BNY Mellon, I left BNY Mellon, and my next stop was being a missioner. I went on mission with Franciscan Mission Service. So the different organizations will send you out, and then there's this spirituality that's associated with the how you are as a missioner, and so I had the Franciscan spirituality, which I like. It's based on St. Francis of Assisi.
Mhm.
And we had what was called the ministry of presence. So we were not there to convert anybody. We were there to accompany people in their life's journey. And I chose to accompany women that were in jail. And I chose to accompany women that were getting out of jail and were re-entering society. And I actually was an instructor for a life skills workshop. So that was really fun.
That's great. And that was in the United States or?
That was in Bolivia, in Cochabamba.
Oh, that's great. That's where my family's from. I love
Yeah,
that.
I know. So that's I would just say that, I'm not a Bolivian, but I have a special place in my heart for Bolivia for sure.
Oh, yeah, me too. That's awesome. Great experience. So, you mentioned, was it EY that you were with? Ernest& and Young, or was I mistaken
Accenture
there?
was where I started. Is that what you mean?
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right. And now, so where are you today?
So today I am out of a job. I just got laid off. I was part of the tech layoffs. These things happen. So everybody that's watching should know that thousands and thousands of tech employees just got laid off from lots of companies, all the companies, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, you name it, they're laying people off. It is a rough time in the tech space right now. And I was one of the people that was laid off earlier this year. Prior to being laid off, I was the head of equality at Slack, which is a
Oh,
Salesforce acquired company. So a lot of
yeah.
your audience might be familiar with Slack. It's very popular. And I was the head of equality there. And I was responsible for kind of harmonizing the equality initiatives at Slack with the equality initiatives that were already in place at Salesforce, and kind of bringing the two worlds together. Bringing worlds together was my responsibility. So very different from all the tech stuff that I had done leading up to that. But I was doing a lot of ERG, employee resource work, for many, many years. I had led a reverse mentoring program at work. And I was doing a lot of equality work even outside, and all of the volunteer work that I was doing with Latinas in Tech, with SHEP, with a variety of other organizations. And so I decided that I wanted to do equality DEI work as my main job. And so I finally got an opportunity to do that about 9 months ago.
Oh, that's great. So were you with Slack before, they were taken by Salesforce, or were you with Salesforce and
No,
went
so
to
I
Slack?
joined post acquisition. That happened in 2021, the acquisition, and I joined in May of 2022. So it was probably like, I don't know, maybe like 9 months ish after the acquisition. So, um, yeah, so that was why, but we were still very focused on, like, just so you know, I don't know what you know about acquisitions. I didn't really know
Yeah,
very
I do.
much till this
Yeah.
one, but I will tell you, for everybody, because it's a good learning to know that it's not like the first day you're like, okay, now we're all one happy company.
No.
The end. It's like that's when you start the acquisition, and you have to plan for this, and a lot of the stuff is, if you're strategic about it, so you're like, we're going to tackle this first, and then we're going to tackle this next, and then we're going to do this other thing. And so what we decided for the first year of the acquisition is that everything that was happening from an equality perspective at Slack would actually just stay the way it was, because that's what made sense. And then we made plans like for the next year, and that's kind of like where I got involved.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, acquisitions are interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I think that definitely made the DEI work that I was doing sort of unique and different from probably what other people find themselves doing. Like, I've talked to other practitioners, and they're like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." Like, they never had to do that bringing worlds together. They've been involved in just creating new initiatives and measuring, and
Yeah.
just it's a
Yeah,
different.
I'm in Michigan where the automotive, especially Chrysler, went through a lot of acquisitions. They became, they were Chrysler, then they were Daimler Chrysler. I don't remember. Now they're Stellantis, but they've gone through, and it's scary for the employees because you don't, never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Jobs are merged, so my job might be eliminated. I think when you hear acquisition, and police employees, when they hear acquisition for their company or merging or being bought out, it can get a little bit scary.
Yep.
So, but it's
And there's
part of
always going to
life.
be a lot of change. That's the one thing you're going to know. I mean, even there, if there isn't an acquisition, there's always decent amount of change, but acquisitions will definitely, one of the outcomes of an acquisition will most certainly be change.
Right, right. Now, if you went back in time to in high school, sounds like you had a really good high school though. Are there some things now that you've gone through your journey that you would do differently or recommend to yourself if you go back right now and you see yourself and you say, "Hey, think of doing this," or what would it be?
I think I worried for a very long time, not just in high school, but certainly with peer pressure. It was prevalent then. I worried too much about what other people thought about me, or like the choices I made, or like what are people gonna think? And but that's even a little bit cultural. ¿Qué van a decir la gente?
Yeah,
So it's a lot of like worrying about other people instead of worrying about what's good for you. And I would definitely make possibly some different choices, and just avoid all that concern about like trying to impress other people, or trying to care, worrying about what other people thought. Like that's just worry that you don't need. The sooner you can make choices that are good for you, and the sooner you can have like self-love and self-acceptance, and just be like, this is me, good or bad, take it or leave it, I think the better off you're going to be. But that takes time, and I understand that not everyone has that sense of love and self-acceptance at the tender age of 14 and 15, so that takes time. But over time you'll get there, and the sooner you can get there, the better.
right, right. And having a Latina mentor might have who's gone through it like you have would definitely be of value to a high school Latina, I'm sure. You have great experience. And definitely everything you had, you've, that interest in computer science and going into information tech and all these things have, yeah, you've built up a wonderful portfolio of skills. And I have no doubt that you will land something really special.
Yeah, I actually didn't even tell you that I worked at a school for 3 years.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
good experience too. And did
Uh-huh.
you apply a lot of the things and probably given the fact that you had those experiences, you probably really helped a lot of students with what they were trying to do.
Well, I was not a teacher. I was a community school director, and I actually engaged more with the families. I engaged with children, but I engaged a lot with the families and provided services and support to the parents at the school. And that was amazing because I did share a lot of my personal experiences with them, and also saw a lot of myself in many of them, or a lot of like my because the community was a very underserved, poor community, and it was very similar to the one I grew up in. And so I would see them and be like, that was my family, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I very much their journey and their challenges very much resonated with me, and that put me in a very unique position to be like, you don't have to give up, or you don't have to accept less than what's good for you and your children. Your children can have a different life. We gotta, like, we will figure it out together. And it was an amazing experience. I did that for 3 years when I came back from mission.
Oh my God, that's wonderful, Hattie. I love that. That's great. Well, Hattie, thank you so much for sharing your experience and everything that you've done is amazing. I think it inspires our young Latinas considering what to do and to realize that there's a lot of doors that are open and to look for these opportunities that
They can
certainly,
do anything.
yeah, yeah, they can do
Yeah.
anything. Put your mind to it and you go for it. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I would love to connect more with some of the programming that you're doing around mentoring of young Latinas, because that's so important. And that's at the heart of a lot of what my way of giving back is, to reach back and bring others.
Oh, thank you so much. And definitely, we will get together on that. This concludes our interview with Ask The Latina. I hope you enjoyed it and you join us in the next one.